Today, I bring you 8 short but little known mysteries from various points in history, from centuries ago to ones still playing out today. Of the day the sun performed a miracle, of a lone lifeboat found on the shore of one of the most isolated islands in the world, of a lawman who became an outlaw, of a United States Navy ship which disappeared without a trace, of an unsolved murder from the 15th century, of a blimp found drifting with no crew, of a Japanese pilot who vanished on a flight, of a sound no one can explain, and more. This is a collection of obscure historical mysteries, Volume 2. Be sure to check out Volume 1 if you haven't. You can do it after this. They don't need to be watched in order. And like and subscribe if you like videos like this and you want to see more of them. Okay, let's get right to it and start with number 1. The Miracle of the Sun. Alright, starting off with one that is both really weird and really obscure. The Miracle of the Sun. In mid-October 1917, a large crowd of people were attending an event in Portugal, and this event was to essentially see the fulfillment of a prophecy. The prophecy was, essentially, that on the day everyone gathered, October 13th, 1917, the Virgin Mary would appear and perform miracles on that date. So, on that date that it was supposed to be fulfilled, everyone came out and gathered to observe this miracle. Up to 40,000 people gathered together to observe this event. And right on time, the dark clouds blocking the sun broke, and the sun appeared out from behind those clouds, and it was duller than normal, and it cast multicolored light across the land, and it began to move across the sky and dance and do all these absolutely incredible things. The sun even appeared to fall towards the earth. Terrifying. And then zigged and zagged until it was back up to its normal place in the sky. And if you look at pictures taken during the event, you can see these people watching all of this happen are captivated and in awe. People who were there for the event also added that suddenly and completely dry, as well as the wet and muddy ground that had been previously soaked because of the rain that had been falling. So, cool. The miracle happened and all is good. So, what is the mystery? Well, the mystery is the miracle. The mystery is, what did they see? What on earth, or off it rather, was going on in the sky? Well, first off, not everyone there reported that they saw the same thing. Some only saw radiant colors, some saw nothing. Nonetheless, there are multiple religious-based explanations for the event, and these include it being a sign from God, or the Virgin Mary specifically, and priest Stanley L. Jackie agreed. He explained that he saw it as divine intervention coming into play to cause a series of natural meteorological phenomena to become enhanced and take place at the desired time period. He further went to explain that those faithful should indeed believe the miracle occurred on that day, saying, "Those who stake their purpose in life on Christ as the greatest and incomparably miraculous fact of history," and added that those faithful need to pay attention to facts that support miracles. Skeptical investigator Joe Nickel concluded that he saw the dancing sun effect people witnessed as a combination of factors, including optical effects and meteorological phenomena, such as the sun being seen through thin clouds, causing it to appear as a silver disk. Other possibilities include an alteration in the density of passing clouds, causing the sun's image to alternately brighten and dim, and so seem to advance and recede, and dust or moisture droplets in the atmosphere refracting the sunlight and thus imparting a variety of colors. Also, the big thing people who approach this from a scientific perspective instead of a spiritual one have to say is, the sun doesn't do that. And that's true. It doesn't, obviously. Even hypervelocity stars don't move like that. Neutron stars don't move like that. Pulsars don't even move like that. They're weird, but they don't do a whole dance routine. And the sun most definitely doesn't do anything like that. Quote, "The sun did not really dance in the sky. We know this because, of course, everyone on Earth is under the same sun. And if the closest dying star to us suddenly began doing celestial gymnastics, a few billion other people would surely have reported it." Unquote. This is what scientific writer Benjamin Radford said. And fair, he's right on that. If the sun did tap dance in the sky, I think it would have been more widely noticed. And it also goes without saying, but even though we don't know for sure if it was raining at the time, let's just give them the benefit of the doubt and assume it was. The clouds part and there's an aurora of colors. Sounds like a rainbow to me. But truthfully, to this day, no one knows what really happened on October 13th, 1917. So, the weird thing about this story really is, what did they actually see? What did the sun do? In these pictures, you can see people are captivated. I feel like that this is something hard to explain with science. I'm not saying it was definitely supernatural, but the amount of witnesses and the accounts given of it, it's just hard to explain. I'll let you make up your own mind on this one. Tell me what you think it was, and we'll move on to something else that might not be the work of a higher power. Probably. But with this one, who knows? Maybe these people witnessed a super rare natural phenomena, or a rare moment where multiple occurred at once, like a sundog and a crown flash and a rainbow all at the same time. Or maybe they really did see a direct act of God. Who knows? I'll let you decide for yourself. Tell me in a comment what you think. The USS Wasp. Yes, Spino, it is a good name. The USS Wasp was a ship that served in the United States Navy in the early 19th century during the War of 1812. Despite this being only decades into the existence of the United States, she is actually the fifth ship to already bear that name. The first sailed back in 1775 and was lost in 1777. The Wasp of the early 19th century was a sloop of war constructed at Newburyport, Massachusetts in 1813. She was launched in September of that same year, and then her commission began in February 1814. The Wasp sailed out into two successful raiding voyages against British trade ships during the war. One of the Wasp's big accomplishments came about when she happened upon the HMS Reindeer out at sea. Remember, the United States and Great Britain were at war at the time, so this was not a friendly encounter. In the following 19-minute battle, the British crew tried to board the Wasp several times, but the American crew pushed her back each time. Around the crew, bullets and cannonballs were flying through the air and tearing into each ship. Wood splinters would have been flying everywhere, and smoke would have been filling the air with each gunshot or cannon explosion. Finally, after a 19-minute battle at sea, Wasp's crew boarded and captured the Reindeer. Wasp took 6 hits to her hull in the battle, but was still able to sail. Talk about a tough girl. Reindeer, meanwhile, had 42 crew wounded and 25 killed, including her captain, William Manners. The Wasp took the British crew as prisoners, and once they were off, Reindeer was left abandoned without a captain or crew. The American crew also set fire to the Reindeer as they prepared to sail away, and shortly after, the vessel exploded. From there, the Wasp set a course to France. Wasp was a short-lived vessel, but her history is incredible. There's more battles and epic stories to tell, but in the interest of keeping to the topic and not making this video an hour long, let's move on to the fate of the Wasp in autumn 1814. The actual topic of this section. The Wasp lived up to her name. Multiple vessels felt her sting, but in the end, being a vicious hornet could not save her from a mysterious fate. In September 1814, the Wasp came upon the 8-gun brig Atalanta and captured her. Wasp's crew deemed her too valuable of a ship to scuttle, so they sailed together for a time. On October 9th, 1814, after parting ways, around 3 weeks after her capture of the Atalanta, and while that vessel continued on to the United States, the USS Wasp spoke to another ship, the Swedish vessel Adonis. who had left Rio de Janeiro for Falmouth, England. They exchanged customary information, and Wasp in turn told the other vessel that she was en route to the Caribbean. And she was never seen again, as far as anyone knows. If any other vessels sighted her or encountered her, these were not recorded. Wasp's fate remains unknown to this day. One of the only theories that we have is that she encountered and sank in the storm. No matter the explanation or theory, the cause of the Wasp remains a mystery to this day and will likely remain a mystery forever. Though she had an active, if short, role in the War of 1812, she is not remembered by most. Today, she is all but forgotten. The actions of her crew, stories of anarchic calamity or selfless bravery to the very end when whatever fate descended upon them, all went down with her, and those secrets have never been given up. Going back over 300 years further into the past for the next one, we have the murder of Giovanni Borgia on June 14th, 1497. Like with the Mad Gunman of 1536 in the last video, I'm not going to go into the full backstory of this guy, just the mystery around his death. You see, he was murdered, but to this day, no one knows who was really responsible for the act. We have theories and suspects, but no definitive answers. Let's get right into it. By the way, if the suspect we think is truly the one who did it, then this mystery has the ultimate backstab, maybe even literally. Juan Borgia was born in 1476 and was the second son of Pope Alexander VI. He had two children, a son and a daughter, and in fact his daughter was born in 1498, the year after her father's death, so she never met him. You see, on the night of June 14th, 1497, Juan was murdered. He was last seen alive in this game of Clue, leaving a feast his mother had arranged in his honor. He left with his siblings, including his older brother, Joffrey, Joffrey's wife, their cousin, and his mother's husband. His father, the future pope, was not married to his mother, for little context. She was his mistress. He then left the group to visit his own mistress. He took only his valet and a masked man who no one knows the identity of. Okay then, sure. Not weird at all. Later, he rode off with just the masked man, and his horse returned with a cut stirrup. Here's a written quote from a diary that describes what happened next. When the next morning, Thursday, June 15th, the Duke did not return to the palace, his more familiar servants became restless, and one of them reported the late exit of the Duke and Cesares, and the unsuccessfully awaited return of the former in the morning to the Pope. The Pope was dismayed by this. He initially persuaded himself that the Duke was having fun somewhere with a girl, and therefore embarrassed from leaving her house in broad daylight, but hoped that he would come home that evening at least. When this did not happen either, the Pope was gripped by deadly terror. A search was launched, a witness was located, and the body was found. The witness, a timber dealer, said the following. While he was lying on his boat, he saw people come down to the shore at 2 a.m. on a public road near a hospital. Quote, they looked cautiously around to see if anyone was passing, and when they did not see anyone, they disappeared again into the lane. After a little while, 2 others came out of the lane, looked about in the same way, and made a sign to their companions when they discovered nobody. Thereupon a rider on a white horse appeared and had a corpse behind him, with the head and arms hanging down on one side and the legs on the other, and supported by both sides by 2 men who had first appeared. The procession advanced to the place where refuse was thrown into the river. At the bank, they came to a halt, and turned the horse with its tail to the river. Then they lifted the corpse, one holding it by its hands and arms, the other by its legs and feet, dragged it down from the horse, and cast it with all their strength into the river. To the question of the rider, if it was safely in, they answered, yes, sir. Then the one sitting on the horse cast another look at the river, and seeing the cloak of the corpse floating in the river, and asked his companions what was the black thing that was floating there. They said, the cloak. Thereupon he threw stones at the garment to make it sink to the bottom. Then all 5 of them, including the other 2 who had kept watch, and now rejoined the rider and his 2 companions, departed, and they took their way together through another lane that leads to the Hospital of St. James. He added, "In my day, I have seen as many as 100 corpses thrown into the river at that place on different nights without anyone troubling himself about it, and so I attached no importance to it." With this statement in hand, fishermen were called to drag the river, and Juan's body was recovered, still wearing his cloak, stockings, everything. It was found that he had 9 total wounds, 1 through the throat, and all the others in either the head, body, or legs. Okay, we've played Clue. Now let's play Hunt a Killer. Who did it? Juan's wife was convinced the killer was his own brother, Cesare, and there was motivation there. A rivalry existed, and with his brother dead, he was allowed to leave the church and take up the position of man-at-arms, which he wanted. But he was never tried, much to the chagrin of his brother's wife. Another theory is that the killing was a revenge killing by another family who was hostile with the Pope. Finally, one other theory also states that Juan was murdered by his brother. Yes, but not the same brother we mentioned before. This theory states that it was his younger brother, Joffrey, over fraternization he perceived between his own wife and his brother Juan. Ultimately, just like with the Mad Gunman from last time, we'll never know for sure, and this mystery will likely go unsolved forever. Since it's such an obscure topic, not many historians are really looking into the clues to try and solve it. So tell me, which theory you think might be the one, though? I'd love to know. Let's move on to something much more recent than the late 15th century. This mystery takes us to the early 20th century. This one might be cheating a little. Let me know if you think it is, because there's not really much mystery to this one. We know this guy's whole life story. What we don't know is what happened to him. This is the story of Burt Alvord, a man who went from being a sheriff's deputy to a train-robbing outlaw, and ultimately disappearing with his fate unknown. This is his story. Born on September 11th, 1867, Burt's childhood was not one of stability, so to speak. In his youth, his family moved many times on account of his father's mining business taking them from boomtown to boomtown. Finally, they settled in the Arizona Territory. He lived what almost sounds like the typical Wild West cowboy life you see in the cliché Western. He frequented saloons as an adult and got into many altercations at the bar. Despite this, he was recruited as a sheriff's deputy by County Sheriff John Horton Slaughter. Reports from the time described him as not noble, temperate, far-seeing, or unselfish. He did help Sheriff Slaughter, say that 5 times fast, in capturing multiple outlaws throughout the next few years, but his reputation as a lawman suffered when his alcohol problems became apparent to the general population, along with the fact he was associating with known outlaws and gamblers. In 1899, he willingly, but unexpectedly, resigned his badge, and now we come to the part of the story where this lawman became the outlaw. First thing Burt and his wife did once he'd turned in his badge, turned to crime. Burt formed a gang consisting of fellow outlaws, Billy Stilts, Bill Downing, and Three-Fingered Jack Dunlop, all of them individuals he'd once hunted down when he wore the badge. Their gang began conducting armed robberies across the territory before Burt and Billy were captured, but then managed to escape from custody. In 1900, Burt was again captured and taken to a town you all probably know if you know your westerns. Tombstone. Billy, however, rode to the town, wounded the deputy on duty, and allowed Burt and 24 other outlaws to escape. A year after chases and escapes, the fed-up Arizona Rangers chased Burt across the border into Mexico and finally captured him. Man, it's just crazy how many of these stories could make cool movies but just don't ever get to be. People complain we don't get original stuff anymore, but there's so much of it, though, that could be. So, following his capture, after this dramatic tale of robbery and shootouts, Burt spent 2 years in the Yama Territorial Prison. Following this release, he took a ship to Central America and was last seen in 1910 working on the Panama Canal. After this sighting, He was never seen again, and his fate is unknown. Just like the last one where we had our mobster boss of bosses who disappeared, when people, notable people even, just vanish from history like this, it just makes me really want to know what happened to them. And we will probably never know. The unsolved mystery of this whole story, what was Burt's fate? In all likelihood, we'll never know. Did he live the rest of his life working on the canal and die of old age in Central America? Or did someone who had a grudge against him learn he was down there and come to settle an old score? Did he eventually move back north, to Mexico, or even the United States? We don't know, and we probably never will. So, unless you wanted to speculate, any potential film about this guy, really one of you should get on that, is gonna have to end maybe with him sailing off to start a new life. But tell me, how would you end that movie? What fate do you see him having? I'd love to know how you think this mystery ends. Bouvet Island. 1,000 miles from nowhere. Inhospitable. Cold. Volcanic. It's about as isolated as you can get. No one really goes there or wants to go there. You don't want to be there. If you get stranded there due to volatile weather, you're done. You don't want to go to Bouvet Island. You don't want to be there. It would be hard to get there. But someone did. In the 1960s, a lone lifeboat from an unknown source was found on the shore of Bouvet Island. Some lost soul had found their way here. This is the mystery of the Bouvet Island lifeboat. In 1964, a survey team from the HMS Protector landed on the island via 2 helicopters to survey an area of land created by a lava flow in 1954. While the survey was ongoing, one individual happened upon something on one of the island's beaches. A single, empty lifeboat. The survey team found it in a small lagoon which had been formed by the same eruption that created the lava flow they were investigating. Due to the threat of potential bad weather to literally come out of nowhere, they didn't have much time to look into it. A picture was taken, a quick search for signs of human habitation or survivors was made, but nothing was found, and they left. The team's lieutenant commander, Alan Crawford, was the one who initially found the lifeboat and took the picture. There were also some oars on the shore that were found, no motor or sail to accompany the boat, but there also was a barrel and flattened copper tank. A later team that arrived on the island reported that the boat was gone. So, this story stirred up a lot of urban legends and myths and fictional stories of where it came from, and some even, as I can't say it with a straight face, some even going as far as to saying it was from a Nazi landing party in the 1940s, looking for the entrance to the Hollow Earth. Yeah, did Indiana Jones also come to stop them? Another popular theory was that it was the sole survivors of a ship, which had vanished at sea and found their way to the island where they met some ultimate unknown fate. But this is also not the case. So, if not a Nazi landing party looking for Agartha, or some unfortunate castaways from a ship that went down, what was it really? Who were the unfortunate souls that found their way to such an inhospitable place? Well, the mystery has been solved. One of the few in this collection of obscure historical mysteries that has been. I realize I've been focusing on unsolved or merely unresolved ones, but I don't really have to. Any obscure mystery is fair game. So, let's have one with a resolution. The answer to this one, it wasn't World War II related, but it was Cold War related. So, you could maybe write a Cold War thriller about it. Soviets looking for the entrance to Agartha, I guess. Because, yes, the lifeboat was from a Soviet Union ship. A Soviet reconnaissance vessel, to be exact. Page 129 of Transactions of the Oceanographic Institute, published by Moscow in 1960, appears to explain the whole story, and a Reddit user translated it as the following. The scientific reconnaissance vessel, Slava 9, began its regular 13th cruise with the Slava Antarctic Whaling Fleet on the 22nd of October 1958. On the 27th of November, it arrived at Bouvet Island. A group of sailors landed, and then couldn't leave in time because of worsening weather conditions and stayed on the island for about 3 days. The people were withdrawn by helicopter on 29th of November, 1958. So, unless the Soviets were lying and covering up something else, the mystery is solved. Who knows what they were looking for? Maybe they really did find the entrance to the hollow earth on this little volcanic island, and those who did were never heard from again. It writes itself. It seriously, is creativity really that hard, movie writers? I came up with that after 2 seconds of brainstorming. Someone get on this one too. I'd totally go see this movie. I love this next one. It mystifies me. It is an ongoing mystery that is unfolding right now, but I don't see many people ever bring it up. The ping. A short topic, but I really wanted to talk about it. The ping is a sound coming from the Fury and Hecla Strait. It is also known as the hum or the beep. This seemingly inconsequential phenomena is unexplained. No one knows the source or what it is or where it is coming from. It is a noise that was heard throughout the summer of 2016, and it supposedly scared the marine animals out of the strait. Hunters noted that there was a dramatic decrease in marine animal game that year. It has been described as an acoustic anomaly whose sounds scare sea animals. An airborne survey of the area was conducted by the Canadian military authorities, but they found nothing unusual, and no sign of Allied or foreign submarine activity in the area. No one was supposed to be there either, based on their intelligence. The sound is currently being investigated by the Canadian military authorities. Currently, there is no explanation for what the ping was. Amelia Earhart gets all the attention when it comes to pilots who disappeared on a flight, but let me introduce you to the unsolved mystery of Toshio Kuroiwa. Born on Christmas Day 1908, he was a warrant officer and ace fighter pilot in the Imperial Japanese Navy during the 1932 January 28 incident between the Republic of China and the Empire of Japan. Part of the, I guess you could call, build-up conflicts to World War II. During the January 28th incident, on February 22nd, 1932 to be specific, he was assigned to the Kaga's carrier group. The Kaga was actually one of the carriers that was sunk in the Battle of Midway in 1942. He participated in the Imperial Japanese Navy's first shoot-down of an enemy aircraft in combat, a Chinese fighter aircraft that was piloted by a reserve American contract pilot, Lieutenant Robert Macaulay Short. While all this history is incredibly fascinating, like we've been doing with some of these others throughout this video, I don't want to get too off topic, so let's get to Toshio's mysterious, unsolved fate. Toshio was credited with shooting down 13 aircraft in his career, but the year World War II started in 1939, he was deemed too old to continue combat, and he willingly left and became a civilian pilot for the Imperial Japanese Airways. Then, in late August 1944, while he was piloting a civilian transport off the Malay Peninsula, he and the plane both disappeared. No trace of Toshio or the aircraft were ever found and have ever been found. Whatever occurred on that fateful flight off the peninsula is still a mystery to this day. Somewhere, though, Toshio utterly disappeared, and this mystery is still unsolved. I don't know about you, but when things just disappear, it really makes me want to know why and where they ended up. They're somewhere, but why can't they be found? Okay, our final one today is the kind of thing I love. A good old-fashioned ghost ship story, where a crew mysteriously vanishes, with all traces of them vanishing as well. Sometimes with incidents like the Mary Celeste or the SS Pacific, you can tell some kind of cataclysmic event happened, but no idea what. It's always unsettling to think and read about. A ship just floating or sailing under its own power is just wrong. It's like the Orang Medan story, except for one big difference. In this story, it's not a ghost ship, but a ghost blimp. The L8. The L-8 was a United States Navy L-class airship, and her crew disappeared without a trace over the Pacific Ocean in mid-August 1942. The whole background as to why the US Navy was using blimps is a lot. Part of it was for watching for any sign of a Japanese invasion of the mainland United States, which, yes, was a huge fear at the time, and I'm not going to cover all that backstory. Here is the story of L-8 itself. At 6:03 a.m. on August 16, 1942, the blimp lifted off from Treasure Island, San Francisco for a patrol. Around an hour and a half later, the crew of L-8 reported seeing a large oil slick 4 miles off the coast of Farallon Island. Boats in the region watched L-8 descending to roughly 30 feet above the surface of the ocean and circling the oil slick. This was the last sighting of the ship with the crew on board. After this sighting, they would all vanish. At 11:15 a.m., L-8 reappeared off the coast of Ocean Beach in the state you see on screen now. It's derelict. It's unsettling. It's completely abandoned. The dip was caused by helium gas filling the blimp from an open valve. This occurred shortly after the first sighting of the blimp being spotted abandoned. The L-8 continued drifting until it finally crashed in the front of a house in Daly City. So, how did the blimp end up being abandoned, and what happened to her crew? Well, there was obviously an investigation. Military and police were all over the crash site, just like they were after the UFO crashed in Roswell. Oh wait, that never happened. Upon investigating the blimp, they also found the control doors on the L-8 were open. And actually, the crash had been so soft that if the crew had been on board, they could have just opened the door and walked out. So let's go through the clues. The radio was on, so were the engines, but no distress signals had been sent at any point. It seemed that whatever had happened to the crew had happened very quickly. One thing the Navy investigated determined was that the L-8 was not shot down, burned, or made contact with the ocean at any point in the time she was drifting. The 2 missing crew members were declared legally dead in 1943. The official theory that was put forth was that the crew had slipped and fallen out while trying to drop a smoke marker on the oil slick. I always like how so many times in situations like this, it just comes down to ridiculous incompetence. That's always the go-to explanation. Seriously, read about the Kaz 2 if you don't believe me. A few other ideas that were put forth, though, included that the 2 had defected to Japan and had been picked up by a Japanese ship, or that they were captured by the Japanese somehow. Another idea also included that they had attempted desertion, and it had either worked or gone horribly wrong. No matter the explanation, the mystery remains unsolved to this day. L-8 itself remained in service until 1982. Today, its control car is on display at the National Naval Aviation Museum in Pensacola, Florida. So that wraps it up. Tell me which mystery you liked the most. For me, I liked a lot of these, but I think it's a tie for me between L-8, because I love that kind of stuff, and the Ping. Though, to be fair, I also love shipwrecks, so I'd love to see what's left of the USS Wasp be located as well, but that's a very close second. So tell me your favorite, though. I want to know, and I hope you enjoyed. Like and subscribe if you did, and you want to see more so that I know you do. And before we wrap up, I'll tease you with the next documentary topic. Ships Which Vanished at Sea, Volume 4. You all enjoy the mysteries, and I have collected some fun and obscure ones to do for that video, and I hope to see you there. And shortly afterward is when we'll finally talk about the Hadean Eon. I actually delayed that video since you all enjoyed Obscure Historical Mysteries Volume 1 so much, and I hope that this was a good trade-off and that you enjoyed it as much as you did Part 1. There's more mysteries coming. I've tried to pick out ships for the next video that you've probably not heard of before. So, until we set sail to talk about more missing ships, that's going to wrap this one up. Also, let me know if you want a Volume 3 of this series. I'd love to keep it going if you want more of them. With all that said, have a good one, everyone, and thank you for watching.